Okay. So you give me your name and what year, where you were born, and what year you were born. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Samuel Ran, but I was born with a Polish name, Rakowski. I just changed my name in Israel. They baptized me in Israel. But my real name used to be Samuel Rakowski. And I was born in 1924 in a little small town in Poland, and the name is Kazimierza Wielka. The place was not as big as the name is.
What was your parents' names?
Yeah, my parents' name was, my father was Joseph, and my mother was named Zelda. But my family comes from both sides, from many generations in Poland.
So what was your mother's maiden name?
My mother's maiden name was Banach, B-A-N-A-C-H.
Where were they born?
Both of them born in the same town in Kazimierza Wielka.
How about their parents?
From my mother's side, there were many generations born in the same town. From my father's side, they come from another place where my family, my grandfather, owned a big estate next to the city of Jędrzejów, what's a little north from us. And they were owners of a big estate, hundreds of acres, and they had it's an unusual estate there. And I think that's probably from my father's side, the family maybe comes from Spain. From
Spain?
Yeah, maybe.
Do you know what your grandfather did?
My grandfather's name was Moses David. And the big grandfather from my father's side was named Israel. I had seen all these documents on my visits in Poland, so I have all this on paper.
What did your father do for a profession?
My father was in the lumber business. We were not very rich, but we were well-to-do, and we were in the business of lumber, and we have very big business spread out all over the country, and most of our dealings were with non-Jews.
And did you follow in your father's footsteps as far as working with wood? Did you work with wood when you were a young man?
Yeah, I did. My father was a very progressive person, a politician, and he was a hardened Zionist, you know. But you know what a Zionist in Poland was? A Zionist in Poland was a man who collected from another man money and sent a third man to Israel. That was Zionism. But my house was very much Zionism. We probably were the only place in town that we had a house and a telephone in the house. So we had a very busy day. It was a progressive house. We were getting 2 Jewish newspapers a day, every day, you know. So I was living in a progressive house. My mother was a little more religious than my father.
Did your family go to a synagogue?
We had a synagogue, a small synagogue.
You know the name of that synagogue?
There was no name to that synagogue. There was a synagogue, and there was one building, a wooden building, and the synagogues, we used to go there Friday, Saturday morning, all the holidays, and then in the synagogue was a little room where a teacher was living there, in one room, and we were going at Guild 3 or 4 already to the Cheder, to the school there.
Did synagogues in Poland have names?
Well, ours didn't have a name. This was a Beit Midrash, they called it, a Bes Midrash. It's a place to study, but there was no name in my place. Other cities, maybe in big cities, when they have a lot of synagogues, that maybe have names on it. But the Germans burned that synagogue on the first day they just walked into town.
So we're going to skip ahead. After World War II, you had a very hard life during World War II. World War II ends, and where were you when?
Oh, you're talking about World War II?
Yes. When World War II ends, you're in Germany. You were in what camp was that?
I was liberated on a death march, but I was liberated in a camp which was Sachsenhausen or Oranienburg. was 20 miles north of Berlin. So I was liberated on May the 2nd, 1945.
So when you were liberated, at this point, there were no German soldiers in charge? Did they all had went, they left, is that correct?
Yeah, well, the way my liberation was, the last week of the Death March, we were a group of about 2,000 of us in a forest. And then in the night of May the 2nd, the guards disappeared, so we were free at night.
So when you woke up and there's no guards, what did that mean to you?
What that means to me,
What did you think had happened to the guards?
oh God, I'll tell you that actually very few of us survived, but because you know, with the Death March, we didn't get any food for 2.5 weeks, but anyhow. But after midnight, I was with another boys, the rest were non-Jews probably, so they started running right away out from the forest. And we stayed and waited until the sun comes out in the morning. And then we walked out there.
Who were the first people that you met when you came?
Yeah, okay. So we were walked out. So there was a German house, a little house. So we stopped at the little house. And I was ready to kill any German I would see. But as we walked in there was a woman with a child there. And nothing I could find in the house because she had a lot of guests before me. So there was nothing available that I could take to eat or something. And so my vengeance went just out in the field. Stop killing Germans. I couldn't kill that woman and the child. So I keep walking out. I walk out, and I still don't see anything. But we were about I would say, a couple miles away from the main highway there. And so I seen a German tank abandoned, you know. So we crawled up on the tank, and you know what I found there? Sugar and cognac. So my first food in the fridge was little sugar and a little cognac. And then we keep walking to the highway. All I see is hundreds of thousands German was running away because we were very close where the Russians and the Americans met. So they didn't want to be captured by the Russians, you know, what would happen. So they was running to the Americans. So all I see is German soldiers. And finally I see walking a couple of GIs.
So did you approach the GIs?
I didn't talk to them, but we were away from a city, Schwerin, I don't know how many, a few kilometers. So we just stepped up on one of the German trucks, and we get into town. When we get into town, all I see is there was already a German camp there, so they get all the refugees or the survivors over there, give them food or clothes. So what I see in front of this American soldier with a bayonet, I said, Sam is not going on any place where there's somebody is a policeman or a soldier. So we just went out and we found a bombed out house, so we closed on the second floor and we make home there.
Did you come in contact with any German soldiers that were pretending that they were?
No, these were hundreds of soldiers. They were walking, we were standing on the sidewalk, and we were trying to take a lot of stuff from them, you know. So I had an officer, I took his leather coat off his back, you know. He took his watch off of his arm. Well,
they just gave it to you? Or what?
No, I just took it from him.
And he didn't resist?
Yeah, well, he was a prisoner. He was a prisoner. There's a lot of people standing there and doing there. The Americans didn't like it, but they say, oh, that's probably an assessment, so it's okay. So let me tell you, next day, we went downtown. Went into the Red Cross. There was the office of the Red Cross. I got a big box of 20 pounds, you know, the Red Cross gave a box with all kind of goodies. And then I just, we stand in the sun, in the center of the city, we're starting GIs were making the the traffic check. So we were looking there, we seen on the sidewalk was a Jeep and another two MPs standing, or soldiers. So we looked at them, I don't know, me and my friend, and we said, this is probably a Moshe from Brooklyn, some Jewish guy. So we went over there, and I asked him, are you Moshe from Brooklyn? He understood this, so he was Jewish. So you know what he did? The first time he seen survivors. So he said, you know, there's across the street, there's a big shopping center, a big store, you know. He went into the store with us, and he said, you could take anything you want there. So I threw all my old clothes on the floor, and I dressed up everything new. Fine. So that's kind of it. But there came a time after 2 or 3 weeks, we went back to Poland.
And what happened when you went back to Poland?
So back to Poland, well, we went to the city of Lodz, because Warsaw was destroyed, you know. So there was a Jewish community there. You walked in there, and there was a table, paper, book, and everybody came, signed his name. But my friend, flipping around the pages, he found somebody with his family, and he took off. I'd never seen him again. And then I went to the city of Krakow. In the city of Krakow, there was at the railroad station, was written a place, there's a Jewish community on Skawinska 2. I knew Krakow very well because I went to school before the war there. So I just took off. I went to the place. I came in there. There was a book on the table again. And before I signed my name, I started flipping out the pages, and I found my mother's name. My mother survived, but she was liberated earlier by the Russian army in East Germany. So I seen the mother's address, so I didn't even sign my name. I just took off like a storm, right, to the place there to see my mother. I knew the city, I knew the place. I came over there, nobody was there. Nobody. So a janitor came out from the house. I said, where's my mother? I knew that woman. I worked with her during my war, in the war. I worked in a factory that she was there, a supervisor or something. So she knew who I am. I said, where's my mother? She said, she's in the hospital. No, but she's not in the hospital. There's sisters in the hospital. So she went to see her. So I sit on the steps there waiting a couple hours, I guess, until my mother came.
And you saw your mother walking down the street?
Yeah.
Did she see you right away? Did she
Well,
recognize you?
I don't have any words to describe how emotional, you know, I didn't see my mother since I was with her in one camp in 1943.
So this was 2 years.
I was in Płaszów. I was shipped to a place, and she was shipped to another place, you know. And so, but there's a lot of story to this, because what happened is, so I asked her, what happened to my aunt, my mother's sister? She said, Sam, listen, we went back to a little town, the town where I lived, was born. And after a few days, we stayed with a Jewish family who survived there. Some people came in at night, whoever that was. So she jumped out on the window and broke a leg. So my mother said, don't go back to that town. So I never went back to the town after the war.
So what did you do at this point in your life? Now that you found your mother?
So I had a address. One of my cousins who survived the Soviet Union was in the Polish army. There was a Russian army. So I knew where, he told me Raji was there. So I went, on the way I stopped in the city of Katowice. And I walked out in the street, and here I seen somebody, a friend of mine, a kid from the neighborhood city, from Jalashica. I said, Yosef, he said, Yoska, I said, hi, oh, what happened? So he said, Sam, what you doing? I said, I'm doing nothing. So he said, why don't you join us? He was working for the Bricha. You know what the Bricha is?
What is that?
Illegal immigration to Israel. So I joined the Bricha.
What was the function of the Brecha?
The function of the Bricha was, first was to organize all the young people for purpose to smuggle them into Palestine. And then there was very bad things in Poland. There was 250,000 Jews came back from the Soviet Union who survived. So there was a big pogrom in Kielce. So there was a panic. So we moved thousands of Jews out of Poland, smuggled to the borders. We smuggled them to Germany, and we smuggled them to Italy. So from there, wherever they go, they went to all kinds of places during the time. So I was a foot soldier, smuggling to the borders. This job was probably my best job in my life ever been, because it straightened up my back. We defied all the four big armies. We smuggled to the borders, every place, with all kind of a means. So I become a mensch. I straightened out my back. That was one of the best.
What do you mean by you straighten out your back?
Because it gave me dignity, and I was smuggling all the borders, whatever means we had. We moved thousands of people from East Europe to West Europe.
So when you would take how many people would the group of people would you take normally?
Well, there were times that I was working on. First of all, I was taking a group from Poland. It was about 30, 40 people, and then I started working on a border between Czechoslovakia and Germany.
So you wouldn't take them to Israel.
So
right?
11 o'clock at night they came.
Right.
We took 50 or 60 people, walked with them to the border.
In the night?
At night, walked to the border, and then we put them on the train and send them to Munich. And from there, somebody else was taking care of them.
So there were other people in the Brecha on the train waiting to help these people?
No, on the train was nobody. They just came by train. Czechoslovakia was divided between the Russian, Americans, and on both sides of the border between Czechoslovakia and Germany was the American army on both sides. So we got people. So
were there people when the train would go across the border to another country? Were there people there to assist these people?
Yeah, what we did is we were three guys working on the border. One of the guys went with the group of this train to Munich.
Okay.
And from there, all other people were taking care of them.
Did you ever have a situation where you had to approach people that had Jewish children, they were taking care of Jewish children, and have to take these children away from them and take them to Israel? We had in Poland fighting with the monasteries to get the Jewish kids out there. I happened to have a group, you see a picture of it, that I smuggled from Poland. There was a little kid I slept on my back, and then I smuggled them back from Czechoslovakia to Germany. And then when I have an order to go to Palestine legally in March 46. So when we got to a place in Germany where they concentrate all the people, the same kids came to that place. So I took the same kids to Palestine, to Israel at the time. What was it? Can you tell me about getting these children from the monastery? What it was like? What you had to do?
How the kid? No.
How did you actually get the children?
Well,
how did you get the monastery to give
no,
them?
there were cases. They're not on the monasteries. Some of the kids were just in the woods. That group of kids didn't have any parents. I could show you the picture. They were less than 12 years old. We had a lot of trouble because the monasteries didn't want to give back the children, because the Pope said anybody who was Christian it doesn't. Well, they do it. I didn't do a lot of stuff in that, but we had. You have to remember that the Russian army was in Poland at that time. So we had some Jewish Russian officers who were forced to get the kids out from there. All kind of a means. Yeah.
Jewish Russian officers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever have to take children from a family? They were living on a farm.
I did not do exactly the same because I was organizing them after they took them out there. But we did a lot of kids. But some parents stayed alive, so they got the kids back too. You know.
Have you ever had any contact with any of these people that you sent to Israel?
Yeah,
later on?
sure.
Later on?
Yeah, I had some people here in America.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, here, I tell you an example what happened there. About 3 years ago, when I went on the March of the Living, so my wife went to a gathering. And behind her was sitting a girl, a woman, and I don't know what happened. Yeah, my wife asked her, where are you from? She said, well, I was in a school in Magdiel, in Israel. Oh, Magdiel, I come from Yarkona, it's a neighborhood. So my wife asked her, as you came on a ship, Champollion, we came on a liquid ship. She said, sure, who do you know? She said, did you have a Chancellor Shmulik? She said, sure, that's me. She didn't have a picture, I had a picture. I gave her a picture there. But I met other people on all kind of occasions.
That you assisted to get to Israel. You helped these people.
In Israel, I didn't have nothing to do with them.
But I mean,
we brought them, I was with another friend in charge of 130 kids. So there were 3 groups of children. The youngest, until 12, they took to a school for younger people, to Magdiel. And then 2 other groups went to 2 other places. So I didn't have much the truth is I didn't see them a lot after in Israel. I did. The only other place I had a contact is because, see what happened is that we had 1,100 permission to take to Israel, but we had 1,300 on the ship. So when we came to Haifa, the British, that was the British, so they took us to the detention place to Atlit, because we had 200 more people than we had permit. So we stayed there not long, 3 days, and everybody got out. But so people came to pick up the groups, you know. So one group of older kids, they were what's called Aliyat Noar. It's like between 12 and 18, you know. So they went to another place, to another school. So I was planning to go to a kibbutz, Tel Yitzchak. But the principal of the school where the kids got asked me, said, Sam, she said, would you come for the weekend to get acquainted with the group I brought? I didn't think much. I said, okay. So I went there and I stayed there for a little bit. That was my first place. It was actually agriculture school for Israeli girls.
You know what it was called?
I don't.
So, had you, at this point in your life, had you planned to stay in Israel?
All of these people stayed in Israel. I stayed in Israel, yeah.
You had planned to stay in Israel at this point?
I stayed in Israel. I tell you what happened is, I joined a group of survivors, and we were ready to go to create a settlement in Israel. They call it a settlement. It's not. It's inside Israel, in the power. Yeah. So I was in the group, and so we went up to the Negev, Nevatim, to a new settlement, early 47, and so I stayed there. And then they picked me. I was actually the maskir. A maskir is the executive director of the maskir. So I was always, yeah, that's right.
So when you were there, how safe was it in there for Jewish people?
I tell you something. At the beginning, in 1947, we did not get the trouble from the Arabs. Well, I can give you an example. Our place was south of Beersheba. Beersheba was an Arab city. We didn't have any other way. We had to go across that city. So sometimes they were throwing stones, sometimes. Okay. So I was scared. So I was coming every day, almost every day, to the city, to a bakery, Arab bakery, to buy bread. See, when I came with my tender, with a little truck, the owner of the truck took his son to watch my car. Nobody put any nails underneath the tire. So, well, we had very good relationship with our neighbors. It was a tribe, a Bedouin tribe. With very good relationship at the time. But what happened is that in November 29, 1947, they decided in the United Nations to divide Palestine. Remember this? November 27, 1947. That started trouble with the Arabs. So we were cut off. We couldn't go to the city anymore, Beersheba. So we were getting supplies and mail by a little piper. Israel had two pipers. You know what a piper is? A little plane, yeah. Two-seat plane. So they were bringing paper. But 2 weeks later, on December 11, hundreds of Arabs attacked us. We was only 16 people there with 4 women pregnant in that place there. So they attacked us, hundreds of Arabs.
So
hundreds
tell me about December, what date was it again when you got attacked?
December the 11th, 1947.
What happened?
We were attacked by hundreds of Arabs. They came from all over the place.
How many people in your village?
We were 21 people in the village. It's not a village. It was an outpost in the southern place in the Negev. We had 3 barracks, 2 barracks, and a kitchen barrack, and then we had one house building out of concrete. They call it a security place. So we had a parapet on the roof.
So what happened when they attacked you?
They attack you. So what happened when they attack you? See, we had a little well there outside. So the 2 guys went outside, and they were the first one wounded. One guy was wounded there, and I was wounded on the parapet on the roof there. I was running what I call it, a machine gun. It's a brand, English brand. So I was hit too.
Where were you hit?
Right in the back and coming out here, the shoulder. I was very bad shape. I was bleeding like, there were no steps to go in from the top roof. There was a ladder, on the wall. And I crawled out with my hand downstairs. So what happened is that the guy was bringing mail with a little paper. When he came over, he seen that Arabs attacking us. So he went back to another place, Bet Eshen, picked up a kid from the Palmach, and took the door off of the door, and they came back, and they threw it up.
They threw off the plane, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was sitting, they threw a few hand grenades, and the Arab disappeared.
They threw hand grenades.
The Arabs ran away.
They ran away.
Yeah. So he picked up one of the wounded. He was wounded worse. He had 6 bullets in his stomach. So he picked him up, took him to Tel Aviv hospital, and then he came back after me.
So they flew you to Tel Aviv.
Yeah, hospital.
And then how long did you stay in the hospital?
I stayed in the hospital 2 weeks.
And then where did you go then?
After the hospital, I went for 3 weeks for recuperation. Yeah, and then I went back to my place, not to the Negev, but we had another place in the Sharon there. And well, it didn't take long. The Jewish agency said, we're going to give you a truck, an armored truck. And you have to get a driver so they can deliver food for the people down in the Negev, because the Negev was cut off. So I had to volunteer for the job. I didn't have a license to drive. The British was still there. So I went for a few days to a school in Tel Aviv. to drive. And then I went to get a test, you know. It's an amazing story. And I get the test, and they took me, a Jewish policeman took me up to some place there on the top of the hill and wanted me getting to reverse, you know, all kind of. I said to him, don't bother me. I gave him 5 lirot. I said, I don't have time. I have to go to the Negev. He said, forget. So we went back. I got a license. But I was not a very experienced truck driver, you know.
Were the British still in charge of Palestine at this point?
The British were in charge of Palestine. And the British police was doing this. But there were Jewish policemen and Arab policemen in the police force.
When did the British leave?
When
did
the British leave the day when Ben Gurion announced the state.
Which was when?
On May 14th of May 1948.
All right, so this is like December now, January?
This is about February.
February 48.
Yeah, we're already fighting very lot of fights.
So what was happening?
So what happened is that we had convoys. I was one of the convoys that we were delivering food to the Negev. Well, we were winning all kind of ways because the Arabs were still there in the villages, and the British were there. So, but I think by then the British relaxed a little bit of looking up for if we had arms or stuff like this. This was already February.
You're supplying is the Israeli, the people fighting for.
It was not for the army. It was for the. There was a lot of communities.
You're supplying food for the communities.
Yeah.
But not for the military.
No, they did their own. We didn't. There was no military. There was only Haganah. There was at that time the Palmach was there, but there was not an official army yet. Only an official army.
What was the difference between the Palmach and the Haganah? What's the difference between the Palmach and the Haganah?
The Palmach was a part of Haganah. Palmach was special forces.
Okay.
The special forces for the Haganah. They were special forces. That's a matter of fact, you know, it's an interesting story. These forces were trained first in 1939 by a British general, Wingate, because the Arabs had a big uprising in 1936 until the war against the British. So the Jews.
In Palestine.
Yeah. So the Palmach was a special forces, they call it, you know.
So what happened when you were delivering this food?
So I was working in that in the thing, and after that I joined to be a truck driver for the army. When the army became official, I was a truck driver for the Palmach, but then it was official. I was a part of the.
Were you ever attacked when you were a truck driver?
If I was attacked, well, it's not a question. If I was I was attacked. I was delivering. We were smuggled in soldiers from the north to the Negev. So I used to go with another guy with another truck to the border, to the place. And then pick up. They walked over, and I picked them up. So one day, the British had Spitfires. We didn't have any planes, so they attacked my truck. But see, when I seen the truck, I got out on the truck. Everybody spread out, but they hit my truck a couple of times.
Were you able to use the truck again?
Huh?
You were able to continue to use the truck?
If I did what?
The truck wasn't damaged enough for you not.
Well, there was nobody, you know, because we spread out the people. Because see, the Spitfires, they cannot do like this shooting. They dive on it. They only can shoot straight. So if you ran away a little bit, they couldn't. If I particularly had a better. Normally I walked in and they have a big water pipe underneath the highway, but not the highway, the street. So I get closing inside that
A sewer.
yeah.
A sewer pipe.
Yeah, I was attacked, but I was many times going with they were fighting. I was driving them, so I was not a very active soldier at the time. I was just a driver with a armored truck.
Did you ever go into the military? Were you ever involved in the military as far as any fighting is concerned?
Not personally. I was in the place, but I was not the one. I was not the one who was shooting because I was a driver most of the time.
Did your injury affect you? Did your injury affect you from the
No,
standpoint?
no, injury affect me. When I get a wind on my, I was lucky because I got I was bent down on the parapet, so a bullet hit me on the back and came out here. I said, a hole here right now. So sometimes I got a paper, they said they left some metal pieces in there. So that's the reason I'm out of iron. You know what iron is? Metal. I'm a strong guy. I've got a lot of metal in my body. Anyhow.
So how long did you stay in the Army as far as driver?
Well, it's interesting. After the war, I left.
You ended in 1940?
Yeah, the war was over. Officially January '49.
Okay.
So I left. So I went back to the kibbutz, and then I got married. They came and they say I didn't serve enough because everybody served 2 years. So I went back to the army. I was in the engineering corps for almost a year in 1950.
And how did you live? Were you living? How far was that from your home? Where you were in the
army?
Yeah.
Yeah. After the war, you mean?
Yeah.
After the war, well, I lived in Yarkona with my wife. That first year, I lived in Yarkona. We lived with her parents. And it was probably, it wasn't too far, 20 miles maybe. It was a Sarafin, the big, used to be a very big army, British army camps. But then I was a driver again. Yeah.
So after you did your 1 year, and then you left, did you ever have to go back for any other?
Oh, the army? Yeah, I have to go back a couple times on reserve, what they call it, you know.
Was there any, did you have to go and?
No fighting, yes. No, I didn't do any fighting at that time. It was actually, I just went back to the engineering corps. So we were.
Were you in the army, or were you there when the Sinai happened with Israel and Egypt?
No, I was already in America. I came to America in '56.
So, what did you do for a living when you were in Israel? What was your?
First of all, I was in a kibbutz, but then after I left the kibbutz, I was working for a export company of oranges. I was actually in charge of a packing house for a company there.
And what was the reason you decided to leave Israel?
Well, the reason why I left Israel, see, my father, my mother survived the war, and they came to the United States.
What year did they come?
47 they came. It took my father 10 years to get me to America from Israel. Every time he made himself sick or something, and so.
Well, could you?
So we went on a visit to America, and we stayed for good.
Could you have gone to Israel? Could you have gone to the United States with your father in 1947?
No, I didn't. I was already in Israel then.
Oh, so you were in Israel, and then he left.
I left Israel. I didn't know. I thought I was going back and forth like I was doing all the borders. So I stayed in Israel, and my parents stayed in my father was a whole year in the hospital after the war. He survived Mauthausen, and he spent a whole year in an American hospital in Austria, Army hospital, for almost a year. So we had an uncle in the United States who came here in 1905.
Who was it that came in 1905?
My uncle.
Your uncle? Okay.
Yeah, he lived in Lime, Ohio. So he sent papers for all of us. But I was already in Israel, so my parents went to America in 47.
So your uncle got papers for your parents
Yeah.
and also for you.
Yeah, but instead me, somebody else went. Instead me, a cousin went.
A cousin went instead of you. They could just change the name.
No, I mean, they fixed it up.
They fixed it up, okay. So tell me about, where did you meet your wife?
And I met my wife in Israel.
Was she a nurse?
I knew her because when we were temporary in a place before we went up to the kibbutz, to the Negev, it was next village where my wife lived. So we were in contact before. And then when I got, she was young there. I didn't pay attention to her. She was 17 years old when I first met her.
And you were how old?
I was 6 years older.
Okay.
So, but then we were friends, and we were but then when I got wounded, and I was in hospital in Tel Aviv, she came to visit me. And she apparently got so that's where we started doing for good. That's why we married in 49.
Did you have children in Israel?
I had 2 children in Israel, yeah. My daughter was born in 1950, and my son was born in 54 in Israel. And then in 55 we went to America with both of them. We left a house, beautiful house in Tel Aviv. We went temporary, but every time we went to go back, my father gets sick. He saw on our faces political sickness that I couldn't go, so finally we stayed.
What did you do as a profession in the United States?
United States, I was in the building business, building houses, building apartments.
Where?
In Kenton, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
I was very successful. I made a lot of money there. So, this country is a great country, I can tell you. No better place than the United States. It's a golden Medina. You know what a golden Medina is?
Tell me.
It's gold is gold. In Medina is a country in Hebrew. The Jewish said it's a golden Medina. It's a gold country.
So you were born in Poland.
Right.
You escaped to Israel, and you lived there.
10 years.
That was this place that saved your life after the war, in reality, Israel. And then you left to the United States. So what country do you identify with?
Well, I'll tell you something. People don't understand this. I love Poland. You know why? Listen, the place when I was born and I lived there for 16 years, you know, and my family lived there. Every cobblestone on that place I was there. We were pretty good off people. We personally didn't suffer anti-Semitism in Poland. We did not. There was a lot of anti-Semitism. I went to a Polish school for 7 years. 1 Jewish boy and 2 girls with 15 non-Jews. I never suffered anything there. There was a lot of trouble, but I never suffered anything. I can tell you what kind of a guy I was. I was in the 5th grade in a Polish school, and behind me was sitting a guy, and he called me Dirty Jew. You know what Sam did? We had ink in the thing there. I picked up the thing and I spilled on him, and then I said to the kids, the rest of the kids, tell me now, who is dirty? And the kids were clapping. I had a teacher who was the head of the Ku Klux Klan in the city. You know, something like this.
In Poland?
Yeah, the most anti-Semitic group. He was my teacher. I was his best student, and we were the best friends with him. So he hated the rest of the Jews. He didn't hate me. It's hard to understand this, right? So we had, I would say, we had a good life in Poland. My family, not all the families, some of our families were poor, but we were in good shape. And We were modern clothes, we were progressive people, Zionists. I mean, I did not suffer in Poland. So what I'll tell you is, when I went out to the street, nobody asked me where you're from. Any place else I went, the first question is, where you from? Even when I get to Florida, you have to know where I come from. I'm a stranger every place except in my place there. That's fine. It's hard to understand this. People don't understand what I'm talking. When I walk, I've been back to Poland probably 20 times. When I walk in that street, everybody knows, oh, the Poles who I am.
Still today?
Yeah, into today. You know that I took 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 1915, I took 4 buses with kids and 2 buses with adults to my city, and went to my house there. In front of the house, we had a big celebration, and the mayor of the city came to greet us. So this is it's unusual in Poland, because normally people came back to the houses and they want to kill you. My house stands there, and I come in the house, everybody knows that's my house. They want to buy it from me, and I said no, because they would tell me, oh, he came to get the money. So I don't want it. So it's funny, I'm a funny guy about this, because see what happened is, I would say this, if I would not have had help from some Polish people, I wouldn't be here today. We went in hiding with Polish people. They took us, they helped us. I had all kind of help with Polish people. But at the same time, they killed a lot of my people, Polish people too. You see what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? I've been back to places where some Poles hide my people for 18 months in a barn, and then the partisans came and killed them there. So how you deal with the man who was saving Jews for 14 months, my uncle, and the people who killed them? So this is, a lot of people don't understand this, Polish people, yeah. So, and I'm not talking in favor of Polish people, you know, because I have today, you know, I'm going on the march. It's now for the last month, I get the manager, the director of the museum in Krakow wants to see me. He wants to, I got emails for him, he wants to meet with me, you know. So there's all kind of people. There's the most, probably anti-Semitism is very much in Poland, like any other place. There's one thing in Poland that you don't have here now, you don't have violence in Poland. You have a lot of anti-Semitism, talk it, but no violence. Would you believe this?
Why is that?
I don't know, that's what it is. Because most of the time, anti-Semitism in Poland was twofold, or from the church, or economic. 90% of commerce between the 2 wars was run by Jews.
What do you mean?
90% of commerce in Poland was run by the Jews. So that's economically jealousy.
During World War II?
Huh?
During World War II or before?
Between the 2 wars. Don't forget, after World War II, that's a bad thing. I'm talking between the 2 wars.
And World War II.
After the war was terrible, because what happened is, that Polish became communist. The communists were fighting the right-wingers, the Polish right-wingers. You see what I'm saying? The Polish army was anti-Semitic and nationalist. The communists was fighting them. So what happened is that a lot of Jews under the communist regime became working for the secret police, Jews. You understand what I'm saying? like the Inca were there in Russia, in Poland at the Uber, they call it. So a lot of Jews worked over there at the communists. So the Poles blamed the Jews for the, so, you know, so there was a lot of bad things. And then you came back, you wanted your property, they killed you. They killed 1,500 Jews after the war, you know, in Poland, after the war. There was one pogrom, they killed 42 Jews in Kielce in 1946. So after the war, there's no question about it. And during the war, what happened is that, like I told you before, there was certain people who were killing Jews. Or they giving the Jews to the Germans, one or the other. But there were a lot of people who were helping. There's probably more Jews, the Polish saved, and they killed more Jews than anybody else aside Germany. So that's a very complicated Polish-Jewish relationship is a complicated issue. We lived there for 1,000 years, suffered and succeed. Was the biggest Jewish community in the world.
Yes.
And the most creative Jewish community in the world. That all came an end with there were problems because Poland always had a group of people who were anti-Semitic, very violent, nationalists. Always been there from day one.
The church was involved also?
The church was terrible too, because they see, like we lived on the main street in the village, on the main street between the. It was a small town, 3,000 people with 60 or 70 Jewish families. We were 12% of population. But on Easter, when they walked out from the church and they talked to the Jewish girl, we never went out. We stayed out in the homes that day. When they came out from the church, they didn't see any Jews on the street because they were talking about Jesus killed Christ.
Jews killed Christ, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this one day we stayed out from their side, you know.
When you talk about you were a Zionist, when you were in Poland,
yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Huh?
What do you mean by you were a Zionist? You didn't mean you want to live in Israel. You meant what?
Yeah, there was a will to live in Israel, but most of us stayed there. First of all, it was hard to go to Israel too because you needed, British had a quota to go to Israel.
I want to ask you a question.
So from my town was two girls went.
When you were working with the
What that?
you were with the Baruch. What's the name of the organization?
MySpace?
No, the Baruch. What's it called? The organization that took the children and people to Israel.
Oh, that was after the war.
What was that called?
Bricha.
Brecha. You're working with Brecha. You had people. Was there ever a time you were able to send people there illegally?
Yeah, that was illegally, but I did not work on the ships who took illegally to Palestine. That's what the Mossad was working. Our job was to bring them to the Mediterranean border, to Italy. And from there, somebody else was taking care, not me.
Do you know how they got to? If it was illegal, how did they get?
Yeah, they got ships, small ships, bought or donated. There's a lot of American Jews was helping on this. There's actually, you know, the Exodus was an American who was the headman, the captain of the ship. There were some American sailors, Jewish sailors, who were helping. But that was a big project. They had 60 ships, I think, taken to Israel, and the British were intercepting them on the open. When they got to the shores of Israel, they intercepted ships, and most of them, they took them to Cyprus. They had two big camps in Cyprus until the state of Israel, when we got back to, we could take in Palestine. So the British were intercepting all these ships.
and they would make the ships go to Cyprus.
They went to,
They make the people go to Cyprus.
to Cyprus, or some of them stayed in Israel in the detention camps. There was all kind of stuff, yeah. But the British were intercepting
So
the ship.
what was the quota? How many people could
Oh,
come in every year?
Until in 1939, the British government decided, they call it the White Paper. They decided to stop Jewish immigration, except for 5 years, 15,000 people can come a year. 15,000 people a year for 5 years. And at the same time, they restricted that Jews cannot buy land from Arabs either. This was the White Paper in 1939, what the British had there. So there was a quota. So every time we went over the quota, it was illegal.
What did that do in Israel as far as people who lived in Israel? Did you know people who lived in Israel who wanted to buy a home, they weren't allowed to buy a home?
Without that,
You had people that you knew that were in Israel during World War II who wanted to buy a home but couldn't buy a home because they weren't allowed to buy from Arabs.
after World II, there was big fights with the British. We had terrorists, we had Jewish terrorists, Haganah, everybody was fighting this. But I'm talking what they decided in 1939, 15,000 a year. So after the state we got all the Jews we want.
Once the British left.
Yeah, sure.
And once the British left, what did the Arabs do?
Well, let me tell you something. There were big fights before the state was formed. In February, March, and April, the local British, local Arabs were fighting us. They had a big army, the Palestinians. Oh yeah, we had big fights. As a matter of fact, see, there was another trouble is that the Jordanian army was run by the British, was actually in Palestine. They had the British had the Jordanian army in Palestine. So they were fighting this. You know, the first day of the war started, well, this was before, we had big fights with them before. Some of the stuff we were not successful. They overrun the old city of Jerusalem, the Jordanian, you know. And they overrun a whole Gush Etzion, a lot of communities. And then they blocked the road to Jerusalem. We couldn't go to Jerusalem on the highway. So we built a new road. They call it Burma Road, you know, because the British, the Jordanian army stayed there on the highway to Jerusalem, you know. So there was a lot of trouble we had in the beginning of the war, you know. And so then in 1948 we were attacked by all the other armies. So even we were at the
how many grandchildren do you have?
I got 4 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild.
I want you to tell them now.
The names?
No, I want you to, they know who they are. I want you to talk to them and tell them what your feeling is as far as life is concerned, your experiences, what kind of people do you want them to be?
And let me tell you something. My kids and my grandchildren know everything what we are. And I took them all to Poland. All of them were in Poland. Not all the grandchildren, but some of them. And they all went together on gatherings of survivors. So I don't have to talk to them. They know exactly what that is. And as a matter of fact, I'm going now, this next week, one of my granddaughters from California, she's in the 30s. She's going with me on the bus this year too. So my family is very aware of, I don't have to talk to them. They know what I want for them. And so we get together. I had a big birthday at 90, you know. You see that flag there on the wall? The congressman gave me no, on the closet here.
Okay.
The congressman, local congressman Deutsch, brought the flag from the Congress. It was flying that day. I got it for the 90th birthday. So I'm very active in the community too. Very active. I deliver food on meals. I talk to kids. I go all kind of places. I'm very active in the Jewish Federation Family Service. You know. So not only this, they use me for a picture, what they call a child picture photo for their advertising, the Federation for collecting money. So I'll get around there. I don't like publicity, so I stayed quiet there.
Do you think that people today...
People like me. You know, I've been telling you from here.
What's that American flag above? That's
the flag what I brought from the flying on the day of my birthday, on 90th birthday, when the congressman brought this. So I'm doing okay. I'm helping a lot of people. I always help, but I do it with a smile, what is important, you know. I got a lot of sense of humor too, so I can make a joke about bad things, you know. I can tell you a story about it.
Sure.
I'm going on March of the Living every year. So I'm almost the only survivor there. There's other survivors, but they don't have my experience. They were born someplace, or children survivors, like this Goldstein. Isn't that Goldstein woman?
The who?
That Goldstein woman yesterday.
Oh yes. Okay,
yeah.
Yes.
She's going with me, but she was a child in France.
Right. Yes.
3 years old, and so anyhow. So one day, the manager of the director of the march came over to me and said, "Sam, I got a complaint about you." I said, "What's the complaint, Jack?" "Somebody told me you told them it wasn't so bad." So I don't know, but some occasion, you know, because generally, I tell you, the way I talk to the kids, I just want to give them a feeling, how it feels in certain situations, you know, in the camp. How it feels to be 8 months hungry. I tell them what to get the food. It doesn't matter how many people they killed. This is another story. Or when I go to the march, I take 140 kids inside the cattle car, you know. I take them inside, all of them. And I let them sweat a little bit in there. And to have a feeling how it feels to be in a cattle car. There are billions of people who are moved in cattle cars. So that's my style, so. Okay.
You were in a cattle car. You were transported in a cattle car.
A what?
You were in a cattle car several times, right?
Where?
You were transported several times in a cattle car.
I was 4 times in the cattle car.
4 times.
Yeah.
And the first time you went in there, what was that experience?
I'll tell you something. When you get it in that cattle car, the trouble with this is that you don't know where you're going. Whatever they tell you, you don't believe. See, I was in a cattle car because they moved me from one camp to the other camp.
But did you know that?
But most of the millions of people went to dead camps.
Right.
And they never seen the light in that. But so you don't know where you're going because you already know what's going on. So when you walked in that cattle car, see, and we went in better condition than the rest of the people because normally they packed old people, children, everything in a cattle car, 120 people. And we were only like 75, 100 people, but we were, most of us, working people. You understand what I'm saying? So we were in better condition, but the main thing that you don't know where you're going. When they shut that door up, the truth is you become an animal in that car. And then when you get out from the car, and you get in the shower room, and you don't know what's going to come out from that shower, gas or water.
And when water comes out?
When water comes out, you know, the first time when we went to that place there, we start singing a song. There's a Hebrew song. Mayim Chai, Mayim life, Mayim makes life, water makes life. It's a Hebrew song like this. Every time you get in that cattle car, you don't know where you're going. It's the most. I think, generally, I think that the cattle cars were the worst suffering of Jews. You know, millions of people were moved in these cattle cars. Normally, when I was in a cattle car, I was a day, a night, and the next day maybe. But some people were in these cattle cars coming from Greece, from Saloniki, in August, in the summer. When they came to Auschwitz, half of them was dead in their cars. They were traveling 7 days without water, without food, without this. Half of the people were dead in there. And what's going on in the cattle cars, the strong people reaching out for air, they don't care if they trample over young people, old people, something like this. So it's the most frustrating, the most suffering place of this. See, you go in the gas chamber, it takes 10 minutes, you're dead. But here you travel 2 or 3 days, or 4 days, or 7 days. That's an amazing.
With no food.
Huh?
With no food, no water.
What?
No food, no water.
Nothing. Well, they give you, they put in a bucket of water on the corner and a bucket for sanitation. But who can get to it? It's a big story, but people don't understand this, you know. Cattle cars. And you have to remember there's something else. That before they got to cattle cars, they probably spent 2 or 3 days outside on the field or in some places, you know, or truant, you know. So when they already got to the cattle car, they will have problems already. You don't imagine what that is. You know, the ghetto of Warsaw had 500,000 people. In 2 months, from July 22nd to September 18, they moved 356,000 people from Warsaw to Treblinka for dead. 350,000 people in 2 trains a day. They opened up Treblinka death camp. There was no working there, only a death camp. Amazing story. What? So she made it.